I'm going to show you how to open the Genesis Coupe spec D taillights.
Let's start with the tools that we'll need. You obviously need a Genesis Coupe taillight. This taillight does have screws that we have to remove, so Phillips head screw, or it has Phillips head screwdrivers. This taillight has Phillips head screws keeping the back housing on, so Phillips head screwdriver or a Phillips head screwdriver on an impact. Next up, we will be cutting this taillight open. I highly recommend using an ultrasonic cutter for this. This one is battery powered, which does not work as well as the one that is directly plugged into the wall. If you don't have an ultrasonic cutter and don't want to buy one, you can use a Dremel. The only problem with using a Dremel on the Genesis Coupe spec D lights is that the inner housing is not going to come out, so all this dust that you're going to cut and leave inside the light is really hard to remove. So I highly recommend using the ultrasonic cutter, or you can use a hot knife. We are going to use a hot knife to seal it up anyway. So if you don't want to spend the $400 on an ultrasonic cutter, just get you a hot knife with a, relatively thin blade right there, and that you can use to cut it up. So in order, I would go ultrasonic cutter, hot knife. Absolute last resort would be Dremel to cut these things open. Dremel just causes way too much dust. Now that we have it cut open, we're gonna use a flathead screwdriver to pry the back housing off. Like I said already, we are going to use a hot knife. We're going to melt the two halves back together again. Then we'll come back with some black silicone to seal the whole thing up, make it completely watertight.
Spec D always ships their lights with this really nice plastic, which when I'm cutting, when I'm building these, I leave the plastic on there the entire time. I want the customer to be the first one to remove the plastic and reveal that fresh lens. So we're gonna go ahead and just slightly peel it back so that we have access to the back housing all the way around, and we can get started.
So the first thing you'll notice is this. Each of the screws on the back of the housing that is not within the foam seal has this silicone on it. So we will have to just kind of chip away at the silicone until we can see the screws under there.
When these first came out, they had water leak issues, and Spec D did a revision where they put in this notch right here and added silicone to the screws so that it would not leak water anymore. So now, unfortunately, we have to scoop out the silicone, and we have to make sure to put the silicone back at the very end. If you don't, it could leak. Okay, use your Phillips head screwdriver and remove all of the screws.
My paint pen is running out, but you can kind of see the line here. So we're gonna go over these right here, under here, and then follow the line all the way up until you get to here. So the housing kind of has this bump up. You're just gonna cut straight along that right there. Flip sides here, go straight down until you get to about here, and then you're gonna cut over so you can go around the fin. This is where things get weird. You see here, we have to go straight down and then across. We're actually gonna trim this piece a little bit so that we can go all the way across without any interruptions. That's because this part right here, the fifth jewel, it actually sticks out. In the back housing, there's this huge piece that sticks out to hold that reflector up there. And if you cut straight across, it actually won't let go. The back housing will not let go from the front housing. Let's start cutting.
Okay, now that it's cut, we can start to pry it open. I like to start with a pocket screwdriver just to kind of wedge in there since it is a pretty thin cut, and then just work my way around. Once it is open, you can go ahead and disconnect the wires. If you wanted to, you could just pull that grommet out, but I like to leave all of this connected. It's easier to keep track of. And there we go. Totally cut open light. Now you can do whatever you're gonna do.
And we have done our modifications. You can see we got the wires for the more fun LEDs. We've also done the fifth jewel modification in there.
So now we are going to reassemble the light. We're gonna start with the screws. The screws are gonna help hold the housing in while you plastic weld everything back together. Okay, screws are in place, now it's time to plastic weld. So for this, you're literally just going to melt the two pieces back together so that it forms a smooth housing again. Okay, once you've plastic welded the light, now it's time to do the silicone. Now, I like to wipe the excess on like an old towel or an old rag or something because you really don't want to have just a random bead sitting there. You want it to be as flush as possible and still seal up. After you've resealed it with the silicone, it's a good idea to go over it visually, and if you see any pinholes, to definitely reseal it again with the silicone. The last thing you want to do is put it on your car and everything leaks. Also, if you noticed, we went ahead and put silicone in each of the screw holes so that it's just like how Spec D sent it. They want those to have silicone in them. Their engineers have found out that that's where water can leak from, so we went ahead and re-silicone that as well. Okay, bye.